duct tape. Stand your ground, no retreat.
Sir,
Make my bond and chill you.
I'm going to ask that you be quiet.
I'm just making a request. You make it $1 million, I'm paying that, and I'm getting out.
Thank you. Mr. Torres.
Thank you, Your Honor. My understanding is that he is demanding, so the date will be November 7th.
November
Now,
7th?
The state will ask for a $5 million bond in this case. Not
Make
only
that
because
shit
of the
5 billion.
defendant's- The
5
defendant's
billion.
statements in the court
That's disrespectful.
in regards to the bond and the threats to the prosecutor.
I made promises.
Those promises were also made in previous cases. The defendant was served 3 years for 2 cases, intimidation, attempted intimidation, and menacing by stalking. The menacing by stalking, for which he finished serving his sentence.
October 28, 2019, Cleveland, Ohio. A man stands before the court calm and smiling. He isn't broken by what brought him here. He's loud, confident, even playful. He tells the judge to raise his bond to $1 million. He'll pay it. He's not sorry. He's not shaken. His sister is gone, and this is all a performance. Across town, a mother holds a photo of her daughter. The press calls it a domestic dispute. The police call it murder. She calls it betrayal. 5 years later, Milwaukee. Another woman is surrounded by people she once shared a home with. A phone is recording, a metal bat swings through the air, her voice breaks, the screen shakes, someone laughs, someone runs. Her children sleep just a few blocks away. They'll wake up to a world that no longer includes their mother. The woman had warned the court. She filed the documents. She told them who to look at if anything ever happened. It happened anyway. 2 women. 2 cities. 2 separate families joined by the same cruel ending. Both of them trusted the people who would take their lives. Both believed things would calm down. Both believed in family. Now they are names in police reports, headlines, cautionary tales. So the question remains, what pushes a brother to kill his sister? How many times does a woman have to say she's scared before someone believes her? This is not a single story, it's a pattern. This is the story of Wilnita Hill and Ashley Hudson. Welcome to True Crime Her Story. Thanks for being with us. Stay tuned for the full story behind the headlines, a story that matters. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video to help keep her memory alive. Wilnita Antionette Hill was born on August 13, 1993, in Detroit, Michigan. She grew up in a large blended family, 9 siblings in total. Some were close in age, others distant, and most were connected by half-ties and shared spaces. Her family tree didn't fit a clean diagram, but it was hers. She was raised by both her parents, which gave her more structure than many of her half-siblings. That foundation gave her something she would carry for the rest of her life: the ability to endure chaos without becoming part of it. She wasn't the center of attention. She didn't chase spotlight or drama. She stood out in quieter ways, by showing up on time, by taking care of things, by staying out of trouble when the people around her didn't. It wasn't that her life was easy. It was that she learned how to survive it with her dignity intact. After graduating from East Detroit High School in 2011, she went straight to work. First Target, then Walmart, eventually Amazon. She wasn't after luxury, she was after stability. When her first child came at age 20, she stepped into motherhood like she had everything figured out, even though she didn't. No one really does. But she figured it out anyway. 2 more children came in the years that followed, and she raised all 3 without the help of their father. He drifted out of the picture. She didn't complain, she just adjusted. Wilnita used social media like a diary. Her posts were full of real-life moments, birthday shout-outs to her kids, late-night reflections on parenting alone, jokes about exhaustion that only a single mother could laugh at. There was no glamour in her feed, but there was truth and heart. Her world revolved around her children. Every dollar stretched, every decision considered. No one had to remind her what mattered. She was already moving in that direction on her own. In 2017, she met someone new. The relationship brought her peace she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't perfect, but it was steady. That same year, she gave birth to her 3rd child. For the first time in a long time, her life felt less like a reaction and more like a rhythm. She had hope, a future that felt within reach. But the thing about family is, It doesn't always reflect the same light back to you that you try to shine into it. For Wilnita, that truth had a name: Antonio Swanson. They were half-siblings, connected through their father. They had a complicated bond. While she chased security, Antonio kept chasing conflict. His record stretched back years: domestic violence, theft, intimidation. Most recently, he'd served 3 years for stalking and attempting to intimidate a 17-year-old girl. But despite it all, Wilnita never gave up on him. She gave him rides, lent him money, let him vent when no one else would pick up his calls. She forgave him for things others didn't even know about. Because that's who she was: loyal, even when it hurt. She believed in second chances. She believed that if she didn't show him grace, maybe no one else would. And in the world she came from, family wasn't something you gave up on. Not easily. Antonio didn't make it easy. His behavior was unstable, online and off. His social media was littered with threats and weapons. He talked about being disrespected, forgotten, taken advantage of. He blamed everyone around him for the life he refused to take responsibility for. Still, she defended him. She believed that underneath all that anger, her brother was still in there somewhere. She didn't cut him off. Even when his presence made others uncomfortable, she kept him close. When she took his car without asking, it wasn't theft. It was routine. They had shared things before: rides, clothes, favors. That's how it had always been. But something shifted in him. Something she didn't see coming. Something she never expected him to act on. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't naive. She simply believed that love was enough to hold people together, even when everything else said it wouldn't. What she couldn't have known, what no one imagined, was how quickly a small act would turn into something final. Wilnita Hill wasn't just a name in a headline. She was a mother who made birthdays feel like Christmas on a tight budget. She was a worker who showed up even when the shift ran long and the babysitter canceled. She was a sister who kept giving, even when nothing came back. But sometimes, the people you protect the hardest are the ones who leave you the most exposed. Antonio Swanson didn't explode overnight. His anger had been growing for years. Loud in some places, quiet in others. People who knew him had seen the way he moved. There was a time when he blended in, but that time passed. His name started showing up in police records across Cleveland. One arrest turned into a pattern: domestic violence, intimidation, theft. He had no steady job, no consistent housing. He moved through life on impulse and blame. By 2016, he was already deep into the system. That year, he was charged with stalking a 17-year-old girl in Cleveland Heights. He followed her, harassed her, threatened her. The court found enough evidence to convict. He served 3 years. While inside, he said things that stuck with the people who heard them. In jail, he told someone he should have killed the girl he was stalking. That wasn't just a threat. It was a thought he had been carrying around. The kind that doesn't leave once it finds space. He was released in June 2019. 4 months later, his sister would be dead. He came out of prison with more resentment than remorse. On social media, he posted guns. He posted threats. He talked about being disrespected. He hinted at revenge. There were videos where he mumbled into the camera, his tone shifting from quiet to sharp with no warning. He moved through platforms like he was looking for someone to listen, but he wasn't asking for help. He was warning people. And most didn't catch it. The ones who knew him best saw it, though. Family members said he had changed. He looked more tense, talked less, watched people harder than he used to. It wasn't just about being troubled. It was something else. There was a darkness on him, a disconnect, like whatever was holding him together had been wearing thin. Wilnita saw some of it, but she saw it through a lens only she understood. That was her brother. Half-brother, technically, but family all the same. She had shared rides with him, passed along job applications, answered calls in the middle of the night. He was erratic, he was stubborn, but to her, he was still family. She told people he just needed stability, someone to look out for him, someone who wouldn't give up. What she didn't fully realize was that Antonio didn't want help. He wanted control. And when he didn't get it, he viewed it as disrespect. That's what made him dangerous. Inside the family, people started pulling back. They didn't trust his mood. They didn't want him around their kids. He'd get quiet in rooms where people used to joke. His words came out clipped, guarded. Sometimes he'd stare too long. Sometimes he'd say something so sharp it stopped conversation. But Wilnita didn't step away. She believed he could come back from wherever he was mentally. She believed time would work it out, that maybe what he needed was more patience, more grace. But grace only works when the person receiving it wants to be better. Antonio didn't. He felt owed loyalty, owed resources, owed space even when he didn't earn it. He saw Wilnita's kindness as permission, her silence as weakness. That's how it grew, this quiet shift between them. She thought they had an understanding. He thought she had crossed a line. The week before everything happened, he had been posting more. He went live, pacing through his apartment, muttering about trust, respect, people using him. There was a clip where he waved a gun at the camera, laughing 1 second, looking dead serious the next. It didn't go viral. It didn't get flagged. It just stayed up. Another warning no one took seriously. The line between frustration and danger had already faded. Antonio wasn't just unpredictable. He was ready. He had a record, a weapon, a target, and no one who could tell him to stop. Wilnita never saw herself as a victim. She saw herself as strong, forgiving, grounded. But the truth was, she had stayed too close to someone who had already stopped seeing her as family. She believed in him. She really did. She believed there was still a version of him that could be saved. But he had already made up his mind, and the silence between them was no longer a pause. It was a fuse. October 13th, 2019 was a Sunday. Wilnita Hill had started her day the way she started most, focused, moving, doing what needed to be done. She had errands to run. She was with her boyfriend, trying to make the most of a calm afternoon. At some point, she took the keys to a silver Pontiac Grand Prix, Antonio's car. It wasn't the first time. They had shared things before. There had never been paperwork between them, just understanding. Family did that. Shared when they could. She had used his car before and it hadn't caused problems. But this time, something was different. Antonio had been posting online, pacing in his videos, showing off guns, talking about betrayal. His patience was gone. His mind was unsettled. When Wilnita took that car, she didn't know she was stepping onto a line he had already drawn. She thought she was borrowing. He saw it as disrespect. They finished their errands and returned to the neighborhood, East 109th Street, near Mount Carmel Road, a street Wilnita knew well. She grew up there. It wasn't supposed to be the place she'd take her last breath. But just as they pulled in, Antonio appeared. He wasn't calm. He wasn't confused. He was pacing. He was armed. There was no hesitation in his posture. He moved like someone who had made up his mind. Witnesses said there were words exchanged. No one remembers what was said, but what came next didn't leave room for misunderstanding. Antonio pulled a gun. He fired once. The shot hit Wilnita. She dropped to the pavement, wounded but alive. She didn't have a chance to get away. She didn't have time to explain. Antonio walked toward her, stood over her, and fired 2 more rounds directly into her body. In broad daylight, on the same street where she had once played as a child. The same street she had walked to school from. The same street where her children would later wait for answers. As Wilnita lay on the ground, her boyfriend scrambled for safety. Antonio turned his weapon toward him. Shots rang out in both directions. A shootout in the middle of a residential street. People ducked behind porches. Some ran inside. Others stayed frozen, watching from their windows as the man they knew as Wilnita's brother unloaded a gun in every direction. When the gunfire stopped, Antonio didn't stick around. He didn't run toward a car. He didn't hide. He jumped on a bicycle and disappeared into the neighborhood like nothing had happened. Just minutes after the final shot, calls flooded 911. Multiple neighbors had seen the shooting. They described a man with a limp, a gun, and a look that no one could forget. First responders arrived quickly, but it was already too late. Wilnita Hill was pronounced dead on the scene. She was 26 years old, a mother of 3, a daughter, a sister. Gunned down in the same community she kept showing up for, the same place she raised her children. The man responsible had vanished, but not for long. Antonio Swanson had killed his sister, tried to kill her boyfriend, and fled the scene in daylight. But his name was known. His photo was shared. The search would begin. But in that moment, on that cracked sidewalk in East Cleveland, the damage was already done. The street fell quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. The kind that comes after something permanent. 5 days after Wilnita Hill was murdered, U.S. Marshals and the Northern Ohio Violent Fugitive Task Force found Antonio Swanson hiding inside a home on Crestwood Avenue, just a few blocks from where the shooting happened. He didn't run. He didn't resist. He was arrested quietly, like he hadn't just taken his sister's life in broad daylight. Later that same day, he was brought into Cleveland Municipal Court for his bond hearing. It was supposed to be a moment of accountability, a courtroom filled with grief, pain, and unanswered questions. But what happened inside didn't look like justice starting to move. It looked like a man who felt untouched by any of it. As the judge entered, Antonio stood tall in a bright orange jumpsuit. No shackles, no remorse. He interrupted immediately, laughed, joked, cut off the court staff. When the prosecutor recommended a $5 million bond, Antonio scoffed. He leaned into the mic and said the number wasn't enough. "Make it $1 trillion," he said. He claimed he could pay it, claimed he'd walk out that same day. His tone was careless. His face didn't flicker. The room stayed still. No apology, no grief, no recognition that just days earlier he stood over his sister and pulled the trigger twice while she lay bleeding on the pavement. The judge kept going, unfazed. The prosecutor read through the charges: aggravated murder, attempted murder, felonious assault, each one traced back to a moment Wilnita's family would never forget. And then came the history. 3 years served for stalking a 17-year-old girl. The threats he made behind bars. One in particular stood out. "I should have killed her." That wasn't a slip. That was a pattern. That was intent. The court heard every word, but Antonio stood silent. Not humbled, not moved. Just there. He made strange hand gestures, muttered under his breath. At one point, he mocked the law itself, referencing "stand your ground" as if it applied to what he had done. His sister had taken his car. That was his defense. That was his justification. As if that explained why he followed her down and fired again once she was already down. When the judge finalized the bond amount, it wasn't $5 million, it was 15. A statement maybe, but not the kind that changed anything for the family in that room, because what mattered wasn't just the number. It was what the courtroom felt like: hollow, detached, unjust. For Wilnita's loved ones, it wasn't just grief they were sitting with, it was rage. Rage that he could stand there with no shame, that he could smile, that he could talk about money while their family was planning a funeral. The system had him in custody, but it hadn't made him answer for any of it. After that hearing, the case moved slowly. Motions came and went. Mental evaluations were ordered. The family waited for a trial, for testimony, for the chance to speak in a room that might finally give weight to what they'd lost. But that moment never came. In September 2021, nearly 2 years after Wilnita was killed, Antonio Swanson entered a guilty plea. No trial, no jury, no cross-examination, no statement from the family. Just a plea deal. It ended with paperwork, not justice. For the people who loved Wilnita, there would be no real closure. No courtroom moment where they could speak her name into the record. No opportunity to look him in the eye and ask why. That chance vanished the moment he said guilty and sat back down. The damage was already done. Her life had already been taken, and the system that should have made space for her story chose efficiency instead. Antonio Swanson never said he was sorry. Not once. He never expressed regret, never acknowledged the children he admitted what he took from his own family. In that courtroom he laughed, and she was gone. Ashley Hudson was born in 1994 and raised on the south side of Chicago. She later moved to Milwaukee, where she started over. New city, new purpose. Her life wasn't perfect, but she worked hard to create something better for her children. She had 3 sons, the youngest still in diapers. They were her entire world. Everything she did was for them. She worked at St. Joseph's Children's Hospital, where coworkers described her as warm, upbeat, and dependable. She had the kind of energy that made people feel better just by being around her. Birthdays, school events, weekend cookouts, if Ashley was there, it felt like family. But inside her own family, things were breaking down. Ashley's home life had been unstable for years, and the threat wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from her own mother, Tara Hudson, and from some of her siblings. There had been arguments before, loud, hostile, sometimes physical. But in 2023, things shifted. Ashley no longer felt safe in her own space. She wasn't just scared of being yelled at or pushed, she was scared of being killed. In May of that year, Ashley took the step so many victims hesitate to take. She went to the court. She filed for a restraining order against her mother. The documents were detailed. She didn't hold back. She wrote that Tara had pulled a gun on her, a black 9mm. She said her mother once threw a brick that struck her side. She described being threatened, cornered, and stalked. In her own handwriting, she added a line that would later haunt everyone who read it. "If something happens to me, she did it." Ashley also filed for protection against one of her sisters. The violence wasn't coming from one direction. It was layered, unpredictable, and constant. These weren't arguments, these were assaults, and she was begging someone, anyone, to stop it before it became something final. Her father, Antoine McGee, had been watching the breakdown unfold for years. He saw the tension building inside that household. He remembered fights that didn't end when people cooled off. He remembered the way Ashley spoke about her mother in hushed tones, like even saying too much might make things worse. He worried that something bad was coming. So did she. But the restraining orders didn't bring her safety. They brought silence, the kind that feels like waiting. Waiting for something to snap. Ashley told friends she was being cautious. She didn't broadcast the details online, but she made it clear behind closed doors she was afraid. Still, she didn't let fear define her. She focused on her boys, got them to school, cooked dinner, picked up extra shifts when she had to. She kept the lights on, even when the emotional weight of her world was getting heavier. She celebrated birthdays, took photos, smiled when she was tired. But the fear was always there, just under the surface. The people she was scared of didn't go away. They were still in the picture, still circling her space, still present in a way that felt too close. And while Ashley was building a home, they were growing resentful, bitter, and violent. In her court filings, she wrote exactly what she feared. She said she believed her mother was going to kill her. She asked for no contact. She detailed weapons. She explained the history. But nothing changed. No arrest, no distance, no safety. Ashley Hudson was living in survival mode, doing everything right and still knowing it might not be enough. She wasn't guessing. She knew. June 16, 2025. It was a Sunday night in Milwaukee. The temperature had cooled, the streets were mostly quiet, but online, tension was building. What started earlier that day as a heated exchange on social media had turned into something uglier. Words were being posted that weren't meant to stay on the screen. Threats, insults, accusations. The fight wasn't random. It was familiar. Family drama that had stretched too long and cut too deep. Ashley Hudson had been through these moments before. Verbal jabs, emotional landmines, back and forth that came with real consequences. But that night, something shifted. At around 11 p.m., a car pulled up near the intersection of West Fleet Street and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. Inside were her 21-year-old sister, Aaliyah Fryan, a 16-year-old female relative, and her 15-year-old brother, Hazeela Fryan. They weren't coming to talk. They had already made up their minds. The car was allegedly driven by their mother, Tara Hudson. She didn't stay back. She was close. Close enough to hear, close enough to intervene. Ashley was alone on the sidewalk when they stepped out. The live stream had already started. Aaliyah came forward first, swinging a full-sized metal bat. The screen caught it all. Blurred movement, loud shouting, the sound of impact. Ashley tried to move back, stumbled, tried to defend herself. Another swing, another hit. She was bleeding, struggling to keep her footing. Then the 16-year-old joined in. Ashley managed to break free, climbed into a vehicle nearby, possibly looking for safety. Seconds later, she emerged again, this time holding a kitchen knife. It wasn't aggression, it was survival. She was outnumbered, she was hurt, and she knew how far this could go. The video shows her backing away, her voice rising, her body shaking. She's still yelling, but now there's desperation in her tone. She waves the knife not like a weapon, but like a barrier. something to put between her and what was coming. Her brother, Hazile, walks calmly toward the car they arrived in. He opens the door and retrieves something from inside. It's a firearm, reportedly his mother's. Ashley sees him coming. She doesn't run. She stands her ground, still clutching the knife close to her body. The tension in her face is unmistakable. The video doesn't cut away. It doesn't blur. It doesn't warn anyone. He raises the gun. She pleads. One shot. It hits her. She stumbles. She tries to hold herself up, but her body gives way. She collapses on the pavement in front of her home, in front of witnesses, in front of the camera. The live stream doesn't stop. It keeps rolling. People are still watching. People are still commenting. Some don't even realize what just happened. Paramedics arrived shortly after. Ashley was pronounced dead at the scene. Her children were inside, unaware that the last words their mother would ever speak were captured on someone's phone. In the hours that followed, the video spread, shared, downloaded, reposted. For some, it was content. For others, it was a nightmare. For the people who loved her, it was something else entirely. Proof that she was right. Proof that she had warned everyone. Proof that no one did enough to stop it. What happened to Ashley Hudson didn't unfold in the dark. It wasn't whispered. It wasn't buried. It happened under streetlights, on a live stream, in front of her neighbors, in front of the world. A young mother standing alone, trying to defend herself against people she once called home. Her final moments were public. Her death recorded. Her fears proven true in the most devastating way. By the time the live stream ended, there was no denying what had happened. Ashley Hudson was dead. Killed in front of witnesses, killed in front of a camera, killed by her own family. Milwaukee police moved fast. Within hours, her 15-year-old brother, Hazile Fryan, was taken into custody. His 21-year-old sister, Aaliyah Fryan, was arrested too. So was the unnamed 16-year-old girl seen in the video. And the woman who had driven them there, their mother, Tara Hudson, was picked up the next morning. At first, Tara said she hadn't seen the shooting. Claimed she didn't know it would go that far. But the footage told a different story. She was right there, standing close, watching. At one point, it looked like she even tried to reach out, maybe to stop it, maybe too late. Later, she admitted she saw her son pull the trigger. She said she couldn't stop him. She said she tried. She said she cried. Ashley's children were immediately placed with relatives. 3 young boys now left to grow up without their mother. One of them was just a baby. They didn't see the shooting, but they'll grow up knowing how it ended, knowing who took her, knowing the warnings were ignored. Her words, written months before, were right there in the court documents. If something happens to me, she did it. And still, nothing was done. The public reaction was swift. Outrage spilled into social media, across news outlets, on sidewalks. People couldn't believe what they'd seen, couldn't understand how a woman could cry for help in legal documents, name her abusers, and still end up on a live stream pleading for her life. The footage was undeniable. It showed Aaliyah swinging the bat, showed Ashley bleeding, trying to shield herself, showed her retreating, returning with a knife, cornered, scared. It showed Hazile walking calmly toward the car, pulling out a gun, and firing. No hesitation, no warning, no mercy. It showed her stumble. It showed her fall. It showed what fear looks like in real time, and what silence costs. Prosecutors moved quickly. Hazile Fryan was charged with first-degree intentional homicide. He would be tried as an adult. Aaliyah Fryan was charged with aggravated battery with a dangerous weapon. The 16-year-old, though unnamed publicly, faced charges in juvenile court. Tara Hudson was charged with obstructing an officer. Some believed that wasn't enough, that her role wasn't just passive, that her actions, or her inaction, deserved more weight. That a mother who watched her children walk into a fight with a weapon inside her own car should have faced more than obstruction. But the legal system didn't push further. Not yet. The community was left to deal with the pieces. A
15-year-old
candlelight
boy,
vigil
16-year-old
formed the
girl,
next
and
night near the
21-year-old woman
sidewalk
that
where
were
Ashley
arrested were her
died.
brother
Dozens
and two
gathered,
sisters.
friends,
Her
family,
teenage brother
strangers.
allegedly pulled the
They brought
trigger.
candles, balloons,
Her uncle Anthony
posters.
Hudson said
They
the
cried.
siblings all suffer
They shared
from
stories
behavioral
about
and
her
mental
laugh,
health
her
issues,
loyalty,
and they were
her
arguing
kids,
over issues
about the way
between
she made
Ashley and
people
their
feel
mother.
important.
He said
about
his
the way she
sister,
loved
Ashley's
even when
mother,
she
stayed
wasn't
on the
always
scene
loved
and is
back.
still in police
But
custody.
beneath the
I kind of
sadness,
feel
there
like
was
I
another
lost my whole
current,
family that
anger.
night, Anthony
This
Hudson
wasn't just a
said.
tragedy.
I hate that it all
This was
happened
a
on
failure.
Facebook Live.
A woman
That's what
documented the
devastated me
danger.
the most.
She
to
followed
see
the
my own
steps.
nephews
She did
and
everything
nieces
she
to
could
see
to
it like
survive a
that.
situation she didn't
Video
create.
shows people
And
speeding
still,
away after the shooting.
she died on the very
But Hudson
streets she
said
tried to
what's
escape.
not shown
It
is his
wasn't
nephew
just about one
returning to the
moment.
scene.
It was about
My baby
everything
sister
that led up
called
to
me
it.
and said
The ignored
they killed
filings,
Ashley,
the
my
delayed
nephew killed
response,
Ashley.
the
And
system
call
that takes
Ashley
its
as
time until
reliable,
someone stops
protective,
breathing.
and fun-loving.
Milwaukee had
Someone
seen
who would
violence
frequently
before,
organize card
but this
games
was
or
different.
social gatherings.
This was live.
She was
This was
described
public.
as the life
This
of
was
the
preventable.
party and was
Ashley
regularly
Hudson's
there for
story
others
became
during
bigger
moments
than
of
the
need.
footage.
Interviews
It
with
became a
both
symbol,
friends and
a
relatives
case
highlight
study
her
in how
capacity
slow
for
the law
resilience,
can
flickered
move
against the
when it's a
June
black
wind the
woman
next
asking
evening,
for help.
casting dancing
Her name
shadows
joined a
on the
list of
sidewalk
women
where
who saw
Ashley's
danger
blood
coming
had been
and were
washed
still
away,
left
but her
standing
memory
alone.
remained.
And now her children
Her
are the
father
ones
stood
left to
among the
carry that
mourners,
weight.
a man
The
carrying
legal
the weight
process
of a
is still
family torn
playing
apart
out.
by its own
Hazila
hands.
remains in custody.
I'm shocked, but
Aaliyah
not
and
too
Tara
shocked,
were released on
he
bail.
said.
Charges
Words that
are
carried
pending.
the exhaustion of
The
someone
footage
who had watched
exists
this
as evidence,
dysfunction build
strapped,
for
but for
years,
Ashley's family,
knowing it would
the
eventually
truth has
explode,
already
but
been written
powerless to
in
stop
court
it. Social
filings,
media
in news
moved on
reports,
to other
in the
stories,
silence that
other
came
tragedies.
after the shot.
The Facebook
These aren't
Live
just
video
stories.
disappeared behind
These are
privacy
warnings.
settings. But
Because
Ashley's
the truth
children
is,
remained,
black
growing up in
women
a
are too
world
often
where
asked
their
to carry
mother's murder
everything:
was
pain,
once trending
fear,
content,
responsibility,
where family
and then told
meant
to
both
stay quiet
victim
about it.
and
When they speak up, they're ignored. When they fight back, they're questioned. And when they die, the headlines arrive too late. Will Nida and Ashley didn't die because no one saw this coming. They died because the signs were seen and dismissed, because the danger didn't fit someone else's sense of urgency, because the people closest to them decided that loyalty was theirs to define. This shouldn't be normal. This shouldn't be familiar. This should stop. If you've watched this far, you know what these women were up against. So ask yourself, what would it take for you to believe someone like Ashley? What would you do if someone like Wilnita asked for help? Because every warning deserves action. Every fear deserves protection. And every black woman deserves to be heard before it's too late. If you believe Wilnita and Ashley deserve better, like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell. Help us share their stories, because silence costs lives.